Hi, today we're going to take a look at two 65mm f2 lenses which are very different by two different companies. So let's see what they are all about. Today we're taking a look at two 65mm f2 lenses that might have the same focal length and aperture but are otherwise very different and intended for different target audiences. These inherent differences make this more of a dual review than a proper comparison, and this is how you should think of our results as well. Before we start, a word about naming. German photographer Maximilian Heinrich from the YouTube channel Analog Insights published a fantastic video not too long ago where he mentioned that he is a native German speaker who has an English channel was accused of mispronouncing German brand names when speaking in English. You should really watch his entire video, and even if you are a native German speaker, you might learn about one or two German brands that you never heard about. We certainly did.
Voigtländer.
Anyway, from now on and until the conclusion, when I will probably mispronounce the German brand name again, I will just mention the lens as the V lens for short. Now for the review. As we typically do, we shall start with the design and build before we move over to performance and give you our final verdict. The V lens has 10 elements in 8 groups with apochromatic correction. The Sigma has a more complex structure with 12 elements in 9 groups, including a single SLD and 2 aspherical elements. Both lenses are made of metal and seem to present the highest level of material craftsmanship their respective manufacturers reached to date. We do not typically discuss aesthetics when it comes to lenses, as this is a subjective topic, but to us both lenses look and feel fantastic. We actually adore the very unique design of the V lens, and the Sigma is part of the I series of lenses, which includes the 45mm f2.8 lens which we reviewed back in 2019 and has the same combination of retro and modern look which we really love. When it comes to weight, the V lens sets the scale at close to 650 grams while the Sigma is about 476 grams. Without the hood, the Sigma is just over 8 cm long and the V lens is about 9.5 cm long. However, with the hood, the Sigma is a bit longer at 12 cm compared to about 11.5 of the V lens. On the other hand, while the Sigma has an internal focusing mechanism, the V lens extends quite significantly to over 15 cm without the hood. This is maybe the only design aspect of the lens that we don't really care for, as it means that the distance of the front element to the subject changes when you focus, and this is not something that you might want with a close-up lens in some situations. To be fair, quite a few 60 to 70mm macro lenses also extend, including the Sigma 70mm macro or the 7 Artisan 60mm f2.8 macro lens, although that one is an APS-C design. However, there are 60mm macro lenses that don't extend, like the older Nikon AFS 60mm f2.8 lens. Both lenses include a focus and aperture rings. The V lens has a very special design for its focus ring with both smooth and grooved parts close to the mount, which gives better stability in our view. The Sigma has the focus ring closer to the front of the lens, and unlike the V lens, it is a fly-by-wire design with no hard stops. The V lens, on the other hand, has a focus throw of about 300 degrees, which is not uncommon for high-end close-up lenses of its type. The feel of the focus ring on the V lens is really solid with very nice resistance. The Sigma is very good as well in this respect, but maybe not quite at the same level as the V lens. When it comes to the aperture ring, things are quite the opposite. The Sigma has one of the best clickable rings that we have used in any lens. The V lens is okay, but changing the aperture is not quite as satisfying. Both lenses move in third stop increments, and both do not have a declicked mode for smooth aperture change for video, which is unfortunate. The V lens is probably a bit better in this respect, as the aperture change is less audible. The Sigma does have an automatic mode for the aperture, which is a nice extra if you want to change the aperture from the camera. The V-Lens has a clean design with no buttons or switches. The Sigma has a single AF/MF switch. Out of the two, only the Sigma includes sealing in the mount against dust and light rain. The V-Lens only comes in an E-mount, and unlike most manual focus lenses on the market, it does transmit EXIF and aperture data to the camera and also zoom in to magnify automatically when focusing on our A7R Mark IV, which is extremely useful, and we can only wish that more manufacturers would do the same. The Sigma, however, comes in both E and L mounts, and the back elements of both lenses is quite recessed. The V-Lens has a small screw-type metal hood. You might think that it offers little physical and direct light protection, but since the front element is very recessed, we never had any issues. The Sigma also has a metal hood which is deeper and very well made, but it has a more conventional twist type lock. The V-Lens has a 10-blade aperture design, while the Sigma has a 9-bladed aperture. The V-Lens has a 67mm filter thread. Since the lens has a screw-in type hood, you can choose to put the filter behind or in front of the hood if you like. The Sigma has a smaller 62mm front filter thread. Before we take a look at the performance of the two lenses, don't forget to subscribe! Looking at performance, we're starting with autofocus, and the V-Lens is a manual focus lens. However, as we have mentioned, it does pass EXIF and data to the camera, so focusing, for example, is faster than a fully manual lens. The Sigma has a fast stepping autofocus motor. You can see a little bit of how it performs in our video. In general, it is pretty quick and accurate, but it does hunt a little on occasion, and if you're really close, you can hear the motor moving. In our opinion, this is not on the same level as the autofocus on the really outstanding Sigma 85mm f1.4 lens, which is way up there with Sony's own best autofocus motors. However, it is still very useful in most situations. As we normally do, we tested the sharpness of both lenses using our special large professional Imates high-end chart. In the center, wide open, the V-Lens is certainly sharp, and closing down to f2.8 improves the image even more, and there is not too much room for improvement at f4 and beyond. The corners show a slightly different story. F2 and f2.8 are fairly sharp, but at f4 and f5.6, you really see how sharp this lens can get. The Sigma actually surprised us in this test with very sharp results even wide open, and slightly better at f2.8 in the center, on par with the V-Lens. The corners are not quite on the same level of sharpness. They are fairly soft up to f4 and really improves at around f5.6. The V-Lens can be considered a macro lens, although if you want to get technical, true macro lenses have a reproduction ratio of 1:1 or more, while the V-Lens has only 1:2 macro reproduction ratio. In practice, however, this is a fantastically useful close focus lens for food, products, and fine details. It might not be enough for avid insect shooters, but for commercial work it has been our go-to lens for the past year or so, despite having the fantastic Sony 90mm f2.8 macro lens in our arsenal as well. When it comes to numbers, the V-Lens has a close-up distance of just over 30 cm from the sensor plane according to our measurement, and about 14 cm from the front of the lens. The Sigma is not a macro or a close focus lens, as indicated by its 51 cm minimum focus distance in our manual focus test. The official number is actually 55 cm, which seems to be true for autofocus, so you do gain a bit by using manual focus. The macro magnification ratio of the Sigma is 1:6.8, so again, this is clearly not a macro lens. You can see the huge difference in magnification right away in our test. Sharpness in the center of the frame wide open with the V-Lens is outstanding. With the Sigma, not so much, although it does improve at f2.8, so close down if you want decent sharpness close up. Both lenses seem to exhibit a lot of breathing when focusing, so this is something to keep in mind if you consider shooting video with any of these lenses. When it comes to chromatic aberrations, the Sigma really impressed us with no visible longitudinal chromatic aberrations wide open. The V-lens also performed very well, but we have to give this one to the Sigma. Our flare results are interesting. It seems that the flare on the V-lens is much more controlled, however the Sigma has a really nice flare wide open which feels almost cinematic. Maybe the biggest optical drawback of the V-lens has to do with Vignette. At f2 there is a lot of corner darkening almost to the center of the frame. F2.8 is better, but only at f4 we see good results with f5.6 clearing almost everything. The Sigma looks much better even at f2, it is much better at f2.8 where the lens looks pretty great with slight improvement from there on. Looking at the images from the V-lens, it might have a very minimal pincushion distortion. The Sigma on the other hand has a very visible pincushion. Just look at the lower and top parts of the frame. The bokeh of both lenses shows some interesting differences. The Sigma shows nice circular bokeh balls in the center which are relatively clean wide open. The V-lens has a lot of onion rings, and when closing down to f2.8 you can already clearly see the 10-bladed aperture. We took a lot of images with both lenses over the past couple of months using our Sony a7R Mark IV. Many of these were shot in our studio, but a few outdoors as well, and you can see some of them on the screen right now. This has been one of the longest lens reviews that we have done in a while, and it was very interesting indeed. Both lenses seems to have clear strong points with small number of weaknesses. The Sigma is the more general purpose lens with a focal range which is just between the normal 50mm and the longer 85mm portrait lenses. It is relatively small and compact, has a fantastic build quality, and has a very strong performance, especially in stills in the center of the frame with really outstanding sharpness. It has very few weak points other than the breathing, pincushion distortion, and the less than impressive close-up performance. Its autofocus, while good, is not the best that Sigma has to offer based on our experience. The V is a very different lens. It's also extremely well built with a very unique design, manual but with full communication to the camera, which we really love. It has sharpness performance that is higher than almost any other lens that we have ever tested, and a fantastic close-up capabilities even though it is not a true macro lens. On the downside, it also suffers from breathing. Its bokeh balls are full of onion rings, but more than anything it has a ton of vignette when not corrected in camera or in post. Despite these shortcomings, we adore this lens, and after working with it for close to a year now, we would not trade it for anything else. Before we talk about pricing, a note to the people behind the V-lens. We're of course fully aware that you also have the 110mm f2.5 macro lens for Sony, and we would really like to see two wide-angle macro lenses from this series, possibly a 25mm and a 40mm designs. These are very much missing from the current E-mount lineup. When it comes to pricing, we would categorize both lenses as professional level glass, and they are certainly priced accordingly. The Sigma will set you back about $700, while the V-lens sells for just under $950. This last one is certainly not a small amount of money, but our lens already paid for itself and then some. So that was our look at the 65mm f2 lens by Voigtländer and the 65mm f2 lens by Sigma. You can check out the full review on lensvid.com with all of our test results. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to find more videos just like this. See you next time.
Bloopers.
Maybe we will say something else. Voigtländer? Voigtländer? Voigtländer?
Maybe it's Highlander.
Ah!